There we go. I figured out that I needed to put my phone on auto rotate because it was taking the thumbnail in a different horizontally instead of vertically. So that was fun. So yeah, I thought I would go live here on this beautiful Saturday afternoon. See if I could catch anyone's questions. Talk a little bit about some things. Uh, so yeah, let's talk about having children. Having children, having a wife, having a family, and development. Okay. So there's two aspects to this, right? So on one hand, uh, birth rates are declining in Western civilizations. Okay, so if you go and you look at like birth rates in United States, like United Kingdom, Europe, Japan, most Western nations, their birth rates are declining, right? And so there's a great need for more children in Western societies. Okay, but at the same time, it's important to realize that having children in many ways does make development more difficult. Okay, so you just think of the time that it takes for development, right, and the energy. You need a lot of time alone to do your program, to do the pulling down exercise. It's easier to prepare meals for yourself, right? When you're cooking for yourself and you don't have to meal plan for your family. Um, in some ways, it's easier to provide for yourself, right? Like if you have a stay-at-home wife with children, that's someone that you have to provide for. Okay, you have to provide for your children. You have to pay for their food. It takes time. The children take time. You have to spend time with your children. You have to take them to school. You have to educate them. You have to teach them about the world. You have to make sure they're eating proper foods and things like that. So, in some ways, that can hinder your development, right? Now, in some ways, it can also increase your development, right? Especially if you put your children on a program, um, so that they're healthier and they. Because if you're healing your children, it's important to realize that you're also healing yourself. That's something important to realize. Because you share the same space with them, the same energy with them, the same genetics with them, even, and healing them does help heal you. But I would say that overall, that having children is more of a burden, and it does hinder having a family and children. It does make development more difficult. Okay, and that's just something that if you choose to have children, that you're going to have to live with. Okay. Now, it's also important to realize that um, you don't have to have children, and not everyone is meant to have children. Okay, in this life, and you don't need to have children to be happy and successful or to develop yourself. And having children is just another path. Okay, so that's something important to realize. You don't have to have children to be happy or to be successful. It's not, how many children you have does not make you any more of a man or anything like that, or any more of a woman. Okay, so that's important to realize. Um, so I have two children now, and yeah, in some ways, I'm going to be honest with you, it does make development more difficult, right? Uh, your children will wake you up in the middle of the night. Okay, you have to provide for them in many ways. There's not quite as much time. You have to focus your life more around the children. It cuts away more into the development time. Okay, so you have to ration how much time you can spend on certain things more. And that's just the way it is, right? But it's a sacrifice that you're going to have to make if you have children. And it's also important to realize that you can have it both ways to a certain extent. Okay, you can also put your children on a program, and hopefully, the hope is that by the time you have children, you don't have to work all full time basically, and you can spend a little bit more time at home preparing their meals, helping the wife if she has the children, and things like that. That's why I recommend for most men to focus on their development and their career until they're like 30. Okay, Because if you just work your butt off, if you're a young man and you work your butt off and you heal yourself and get healthy, then by the time you're 30, you could have more of a career in place. You can maybe take a little more time off of work, and you're more mature by the time you're 30, and things like that. And it's easier to carve out some time to have children. Okay, but it's an important thing to talk about, that children are a burden. Okay, and I mean, the easiest way to develop in my mind is if you're living by yourself and without a lot of monetary worries or worries for taking care of other people. Like, you think of the past, like, right, a lot of the enlightened people, they were like monks living in caves and things like that. It's because that sort of isolation is helpful for development, right? Because you can isolate yourself from the world. Okay, you can't isolate yourself from the children. You can't isolate yourself from your family. Um, but I would say that in most cases it is important to isolate your family to a certain extent in today's world, because most of the people today are sick and society is sick, and so there's a certain amount of sheltering that needs to take place to shelter yourself and your family um, from the stressors of the world. Okay, but we just do the best we can, right? I've realized this, that having children, that you can only do the best you can, and you don't want to resent your children or resent your wife for taking away from your development. Okay, that can be a mistake I think men make too. It's like I think not necessarily men on a development program, but more like the public would be a man who would sacrifice his career more, right? And then the man can resent his wife and children for he can't focus as much on other things that he wants to focus his time on, like a career or a sort of project, whatever his life project may be. Okay. And so, I've kind of gone through this a little bit, having 2 children now, is that you have to learn to ration your time better with children. And in a lot of ways it takes more discipline, because if you're just responsible for yourself, you can take time to do development, your procedures and stuff whenever you kind of feel like it. When you have children that need to be schooled and fed, in a lot of ways it makes you more disciplined with your time management. Okay, so I would say that with children and development, time management becomes much more important. Okay, have to if you want to like meditate at night or something, you have to put your children to bed at a certain time so that you can have time to do something. Or so you have to go to bed by a certain time so you can wake up before your children and do like a development, like a coffee enema or something, before your children and your wife wake up. Okay, it just takes a lot more discipline with your time management skills. Okay, I would say that it doesn't leave much time outside of work and then family time. Okay, and you could do fun stuff with your family, but just saying, your time becomes much more precious when you have children, I would say. But it is what it is, and to a certain extent, I think it's a sacrifice a lot of people that aren't even necessarily on nutritional balancing programs, like millennials, aren't willing to make. Like a lot of millennials don't want children, and that's why birth rates are falling in Western societies. And it's not because they're focusing on their development programs and they don't want children to hinder their development. It's because they just don't want the inconvenience, because children are an inconvenience, right? A lot of young people now, they don't want to be inconvenienced. They don't want to miss their recreational time, going to concerts and parties and going out on the weekends to go clubbing, and don't want to ruin their Netflix time and things like that. And they don't want to be inconvenienced with children. Okay. With raising the children, preparing meals for them, and taking them to school every day and things like that. And so for most of society, it's nothing to do with the fact that it might slow down their development. It's just the fact that they're inconvenienced. Okay. But children can bring a lot of joy to your life. And it's important to realize that for many people, children can actually help you heal. Children can make you realize a lot about yourself, right? A lot of ways they can help you in maturity, right? And they can kind of teach you lessons about yourself. in a lot of ways they're a reflection of you. And so if there's something you don't like about your children, there might be something you're missing about yourself, and that you just haven't had the wisdom to see that your children are just reflecting you, basically. Okay, so I do encourage more young people to have children. I think more young people will start to have children as hopefully as some economic pressures even out. A lot of the young people don't have enough. Uh, they're too much in college debt to have children, and they're too in debt to the system to have children. Um, and it's important to realize that most people can make it work. A lot of people in our society are poor just because they don't work hard enough, and because they don't have the skills. Okay, and so I think that will change. But yeah, millennials, for the large extent, a lot of them don't want children. They rather have a dog or something like that, and I think that's a mistake. Especially with divorce rates they are the way they are now. A lot of people are getting growing old lonely. You know what I mean? It's nice when you have children and they have children. Then when you're in your old age, you're retired, you can play with your grandchildren. It's nice to have a family in a lot of ways. It's not necessary for development. Make no mistake. It's not part of everyone's path to have children. You don't need to have children to develop. And like I said, I would argue that it's actually easier to develop. If you're on the path of development, I would argue it's easier to become a master without children. Okay? I think that's a fact, basically. But that doesn't mean that we don't need more children in our society. I'm talking about people specifically that are in development programs. In a lot of cases, it's actually best if they don't have children, if they want to focus on development. Okay. So we got a comment here. What does the comment say? Charlotte always shows up for my chats. Some of my friends confided their biggest regret is not having children or waiting late. They bought the lies in programming. Yeah, you don't want to wait too long, especially, you can relax a little bit if you're on a nutritional balancing program, okay? The woman, you don't have to rush it too much. You can have children when you're 30, 31, 32, even when you're 35, okay? So you don't need to necessarily rush it. I would argue that for most young men, that you should not have children until you're 30. Like I mentioned, I don't know if you heard that, Charlotte, but for most young men, I think that you should focus on you're healing yourself and development and your career until you're about 30. And you can always find a younger, it's completely acceptable in our society if you're a 30-year-old man, and you can marry a 22-year-old woman if that's what you want. You don't have to, or you can even focus on your career if you're a man until you're 35 or 40, and you can always marry a 30-year-old woman. You don't have to marry a woman, your age, if you want to marry a younger woman to have children with. Many people don't want to hear that, but that's the truth, right? But yeah, many people, they don't take the time. They buy the lies about children, and then they end up regretting it, and then by then it's too late. And yeah, I think that's definitely a trap that many especially many of the millennials fall into, is that they buy into that, because there's a lot of propaganda about it, like they buy lies about overpopulation, and like it goes into like global warming and the earth is dying, and why would you want children if the earth is dying, right? We're all going to be dead in 20 years from global warming. Why on earth would you have children? You're a horrible person. Why would you have children to this hellhole? Like, it's just part of the negativity that people feed into in today's world. The earth is dying, and everything is bad and evil, and America's bad and evil, and white people are bad and evil, and we shouldn't be having children, and it's just so much negativity and lies. That many people do fall into the propaganda that they shouldn't have children, and then by the time they want children, it's too late. But you can always adopt children too. There's many children out there that need adoption, that need foster home, need to be adopted by. And so if it's too late for you to have children, you can adopt children, and just raise them as your own, and put them on a nutritional balancing program, and go about it like that. But or if you can't have children, there's a great need for children to be adopted. Even here in America, people always talk about children that need food and shelter and parents in third world countries. There's plenty of those type of children in America. There's plenty of children in America that need to be adopted. There's plenty of them. There's more of them than people willing to take them in. Okay, that's a fact. And so that's another choice. And yeah, you make a great point, Charlotte. Children can trigger emotional wounds that you have to address them, and can accelerate soul growth if you're willing to heal. I think it's both. I think it's another sort of like kind of duality of it. In some ways, children can speed up your development, but in some ways, they can take away from, the time that it takes to develop as well. I think it goes both ways, and it might be a little bit different if you're a man or a woman. For a man on a spiritual journey, maybe it might be easier if he's by himself, not have children. Maybe with women's development, having healthy children can accelerate their soul development more. But I think that's something to take into account. All right, guys, I'm going to hop off here. Thank you. We got a couple questions. It's always Charlotte. Charlotte's the only one with YouTube notifications. Okay. But want to talk a little bit, about my own kind of journey with having children and my experience with that, and my thoughts on having children. I think that I think that more people should have children. And I think that there's a lot of lies about having children, and that a lot of people buy into the negativity of the world's dying and we shouldn't have children, and all of that. But I don't think it's true. And the Western society, the birth rate, we need more children in Western societies. And they might bring more joy to your life than you think, and some healing to your life, even if it slows down your development in the beginning or in some ways. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Talk to you guys later.